Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Matters. I'm your host, Aseko Dodo. And before we dive into today's incredible conversation, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy what you hear today, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps others discover the valuable insights we share every week. And if you find today's episode particularly inspiring or insightful, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for your support. It truly means the world to us. Now, let's get back into our conversation.
Awe Genge, this is Mental Matters, hosted by Aseko Dodo.
Well, I hope that every book or film is different and the messaging is different. But in general, I want to really save the world one book and one film at a time. I want to talk about the topics that our communities, our people don't talk about. Everything that we hide under the carpet and pretend that it's okay. I really want to discuss that and open a discussion. There is no right and wrong.
So your bio mentions navigating teen motherhood and surviving not one, but three wars. That's very unmeasurable amount of hardship. Can you walk us through some of those experiences and how you managed to find strength to keep going?
Well, it happened, as I said, by chance. Obviously, I had my children very, very young by choice. I had my oldest son when I was 16, and by the time I was 27, I had my fifth child. So, having children at a very young age is a obstacle in itself. There is the pros and the cons. But with experiencing the war, when I was 17, I went overseas. I'm Australian-born, but I went overseas to the Middle East to live there for a while. We're from Lebanese background, and in 2006 there was an Israel and Lebanon war, which we needed to evacuate with the help of the Australian government via Cyprus and via boats. So that was the first encounter with war, and then a few years later, I was caught up in another two civil wars in Lebanon, and I think that impact on that had on me was far greater, as civil wars are, I don't know if you know or have experienced one yourself. It's much more deadly because the enemy can be your neighbor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm, yeah. That's very hard in thinking that person that you laugh at in terms of smile with, talk with, end up being your enemy, and you never know where will they strike. That's very fascinating. So, did you find did you find any unexpected sources of resilience within yourself through this journey?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I learned, in hindsight, obviously I was, young with the first one that I experienced. I was young in age, but when you look back in hindsight, it made me really resilient. It taught me a lot of lessons in life. That if you're from a European or from a first world country, you're deemed worthy of saving, as if the rest of the human population means nothing because the color of your passport dictates whether you're human or not. I think that realization at the age of 17 changed my way of thinking about a lot of things. Having seen how people stand with each other in war, help each other, and sometimes they don't help each other. So you see the best in humanity and the worst in humanity. All of that builds inside of a human so many different things. I think without those experience, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Mm, 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 mm. And definitely, you said that you were born in Australia, and it's definitely you had a different perspective when you were in Australia and when you were in Middle East. Experiences experiences this was, how did it affect your mental well-being?
Severely. With the first war that I experienced because of my age. And, when you're 17, it doesn't matter how competent you think or how understanding of the world that you think you've got a grasp of it, you really don't know anything. So it didn't really affect me till years later when I started to comprehend and process everything that I've been through. But with the other two, especially that I knew people that died and um, people that lost their lives obviously from that war. It affected me a lot. Not so much as in depression. It's far more complex than just being depressed. I think it affects you to your core soul going through something like that. And then the triggers of it or the impact of it, you don't feel to years down the track. I think now, 10 years later, or with the second one that I experienced and the third one, I'm more impacted by it now than when I was inside of, what was happening. Because when you're inside of something, everything is normalized. When you live inside of something, it's so normal to you because everyone's experiencing the same thing. You can't really detach yourself from it and say, "Hang on, this is all of it from A to Z is not normal," until you're out of that situation.
And I would like to go to your creativity when where you studied. You went to pursue a degree in literature and composition. What drew you to the world of words, especially to- after such experiences?
The reason I chose, I've always loved writing and reading in English, but I think my decision to pursue that type of degree was, it was, and it still is. It's writing for me is an outlet to for everything that I've been through. I can express it on paper. It's a creative way, I think, or a trauma outlet for me to experience everything on paper and with writing fiction. And I write fiction with a purpose, which means there's a meaning behind it. And the first book that I wrote, The Olive Tree, actually does talk about war. In a fiction story, because what I found is people are more inclined to listen and take note where it's a fiction story. As long as they believe this is not real, we can have a conversation. But as soon as you tell someone, well, most of it is real, people just don't want to see the reality of life.
Mm, mm. And I would like to dive deeply on that because I also seen onto myself in terms of, since I mentioned when we started this episode, whereas I've said that I feel like we have something in common in terms of, which is writing, and also I have written a book, a poetry book actually. And to me, experiencing trauma did, in a way, I would say that it's something that I didn't bother on taking care of in terms of, no, I'm experiencing this thing now, and I'm going through depression. And whereas I believe that if I spoke about my trauma, if I spoke about my depression among my family, my friends, they would ignore me, since there's this big stigma around mental health in terms of men don't talk, shouldn't talk about mental health. Men meant to be providers. Men are meant to be these huge people that don't, I would say, feel pain. People that don't feel emotions. And as you described in terms of writing literature, I would say, the way I'm saying it, you found it as a form of the therapy or expression. You spoke about your book. How did your literature background influence the creation of your award-winning novel, The All of the?
To be honest with you, absolutely nothing. It did not contribute to anything, and I'm being really honest because literature, it's like the ocean. It's so vast. And when you're going to write fiction, especially with a purpose, you need to have lived some sort of the experience or something to be able to get the message across to the reader or to the public, because it needs to be read real when it's a fiction story. So the degree didn't help me with anything really, because it's a different form of writing, and I write differently than what we were taught. I can't write in the sequence that we were taught in university. I actually have to write everything down, get it. It's like it's like unloading my brain onto paper and then sorting it out later, which is not what you're taught how to write, narrative, really. And then just going back to a point in what you said about men not, the community not letting you discuss mental health. I don't think it's just it's an ethnic thing. So we have it in our communities. You would as well. It's not just for men. It's men, women, children everywhere in ethnic communities, as if mental health or having a mental health issue is a big, topic that you cannot talk about because it doesn't exist. No, I think just now this generation is starting to really talk about, it's like having a stomach ache and earache, but you are feeling all of this stuff inside of you, and it's okay to seek help.
No, no. And to touch on that, I believe that as much as mental health is now it is exposed in a way of it's okay to talk about it. At the same time, I feel like this generation is overdoing it. In For instance, if they are going something even a little bit, they will say that they are going through depression. So in a way, for example, if they are at work, they would say their reason of not going to work because they will say that they were feeling under the weather, or they were going through a lot of pressure and they have depression. And I feel like, as much as I applaud the fact that we are breaking, little by bit, we are breaking the stigma. At the same time, on breaking that stigma, there's this thing of them thinking that a depression is just a small thing. It's a small thing in a way of how could I put this? In a way of not knowing what is really depression. And I think in a way we need, as much as it's a new thing, and I think we need to redefine it. What is it meant? What is depression? So yeah, and you ventured you move from writing to filmmaking, and I believe filmmaking is it's it's another way of storytelling. Would you say what made you shift from writing to filmmaking, and would you say that you believe that writing wasn't enough to tell your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Because with writing a book, how many people possibly can read your book? How much of an impact on the world can you have? But with doing a film, you can get millions of people to view a film, and a lot of people like to view visual more than read. In these days and times, they like to visually see something, and I think it has a bigger impact. Both are very equally important, but I found, and I wanted to, and we're in still the script stage, but hopefully next year we'll start filming. I really wanted to tell the story of the olive tree from a different perspective. Tell people that the children pay the ultimate price in any war, regardless of taking sides, regardless of ethnicity, of religion, of political background, whatever it is. People need to understand it's the children that are paying the price, and it will never change. This is a truth that will never ever change.
Uh, I, and I've seen it that with the war between Palestine and Israel. The more this In a way, the reporters show the children, and in a way, as much as that there are casualties in a war, but shouldn't children shouldn't be the casualties of the war. The reason I'm saying this is the fact that I believe that children is our future. They are our future, and through I believe through you I would say, telling your story, trying to portray it in filmmaking, it's the best way. And also, another thing that I've noticed in the film industry, um, it's very rare to see someone tell the story in this perspective that you about to bring. And I want to get more into that. In a How would you say that in you interpreting the story, is it are you finding it? Would you say that it's different from writing the process in terms of the process? Is it different from writing the book?
Oh, it's very, very different because in film, you need to expand on not only the scenery and the details, you need to add a lot more emotion, because it's a visual thing again. And there needs to be a really attention to fine detail, which in the book you'd have, but in a movie, it needs to be much more emphasized. The details need to be emphasized. You need to pay attention to what your sub messaging is. And as I said, I need to have my message needs to be clear, crystal clear as well. But I found, with a book, people interpret it differently. Of course, the movie will as well, but you can sort of guide people into, getting them to see what you're seeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. And you mentioned that that previously you mentioned that you were precisely depressed. Uh, in terms of you experiencing all these things, definitely had a lot of toll on you. So, how did depression look upon you when you realized that no, I'm facing this, and yeah,
Oh, by the time I admit, it's not that I realized, by the time I admitted I needed help, I was in a very dark place. I think years of build up inside of me from different aspects of problems in life and everything had taken its toll when COVID hit. I think that was I'm not gonna say it's my breaking point. I think COVID saved me because I realized I went and sought professional help. But decided that I was going to publish my book. I decided I was going to take a new venture. I decided that, you know what, it's now or never. But I think people need to understand, and like you said before, we need to define what depression is. It's not just feeling sad for a few hours and then being okay. When you really feel to your core that you've got a problem, what's on the outside isn't what you're feeling on the inside. And I guess that's why it's really hard to tell people about your depression or your mental health struggles or whatever that you're gonna label it, because from the outside you look fine, but from the inside it's like a tsunami brewing in you, and you're lost.
mm, mm, mm. And I would like to go back when you said that COVID-19, and I also believe that COVID-19 saved me in a way of realizing that as much as I in a way was an advocate of mental health as a whole, but I wasn't well educated in a way of the general topic. And as more as COVID-19 stroke, and I remembered, I don't know if you were aware of Gary Vee, and I remembered in this thing of podcasting, and I always had this thing of I'll do podcasting next year. I'll start a podcast next year, and years went and I did it. But when COVID struck, and I realized that now I'm dealing with this thing, and how can I reach people? How can I tell my story? How can I, how, how, how can I say this? How can I hear, hear other people's story? And after I did my I won't say first, after 10 episodes, and I realized that no, as much as I think this is a struggle, but no, I there are people that are suffering more than me, and I was being selfish in a way of not taking care of myself, of not realizing that there are a lot of people out there that need help, and it is difficult, as you said, that when it comes to mental health, it is ethnicity perspective. How, what courage, what made you say, no, I've had enough, I want help now? And was it that easy for you to seek help?
Well, at COVID in Australia, at least in Melbourne, we had a long lockdown. Ours was nearly close to 2 years. It was a severe form of lockdown. I think, having the children home with me 24/7, not a lot of uncertainty. I realized with this pandemic, especially we had family that, friends that passed away, they got ill. I realized how fragile life is. Who said tomorrow is promised? I don't know where the illusion of tomorrow or the day after or next year is ever promised to us. So in my mind, I said, it's now or never. And for the depression part, I had hit rock bottom for many reasons. And then I knew if I didn't get help then or there and there, things are going to get only worse. It's going to spiral out of control. And I've got 5 children to look after. And it wasn't fair on them. And against all odds, I went and sought help. Like as you said, it's not something common that people, in our culture go and seek help from. It's not something you can just say, I'm just going to a psychologist today for an appointment. People just think you look fine. So I think it was a factor of a lot of different things. It's like a little puzzle, jigsaw puzzle. Little pieces made the big picture. Seeking help with reinventing myself, with and that took me a while. That took me months and months to realize it wasn't just an overnight thing. Realizing that I needed help took a long time in COVID, but I'm so glad I finally, took that step. And I think once you learn about yourself and learn, what is the problem, put your finger on the problem or the problems that you have. That's the only time you can start to heal, I guess, or start to get better, because you need to accept that you have a problem and you're halfway there.
Mm, 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 mm. And I would like to go back to let's say to your film, the point or the vision of your filmmaking, of the film, the drive of the film that we're making. What message do you hope to convey through your writing and filmmaking?
Well, I hope that every book or film is different and the messaging is different. But in general, I want to really save the world one book and one film at a time. I want to talk about the topics that our communities, our people don't talk about, or everything that we hide under the carpet and pretend that it's okay. I really want to discuss that and open a discussion. There is no right and wrong. Everyone sees it from their perspective, but let's get us talking.
Mm, 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 mm. It's something that when it comes to a conversation like that, it's something that people always try find a way to run away from that. And I love the fact that you are willing to open a conversation and in a way going to. And my follow-on question on that is, you mentioned about children, the most people affected by these wars are children. How can listeners get involved in supporting children affected by war?
Well, I guess the first thing we need to do, unless you're in a war-torn country or you're, your humanitarian aid, you can't directly, help those children. But what we can do is, you can raise your voices and say, enough's enough. We are in the 4th century now. We're in 2024. Having war is not acceptable. We are not little children. There must be another alternative than killing and ruining lives. And talking to the politicians and I think if everyone, together united we stand and divided we fall. At the core of it, who benefits from wars other than the politicians? I do not see anyone benefiting at all. No one wins in a war. Everyone loses in a war. Every single side loses because the children are paying the price at the end of it.
Mm. Definitely. It's the politicians that benefit from it, and in a way. And also, I actually recently I was on Instagram. I think it was TikTok or Instagram. I'm not quite sure. Actually, it was TikTok, as it showed it, on the other side the bombings um in Palestine. Also, it shows the Met Gala that was happening recently in America. It shows that we are truly divided. As much as these celebrities have these platforms to talk on, they only push the agenda of negative things. In terms of conversation like these ones, talking about mental health, conversation of talking about wars, how can we, as the people, assist in a way, as the listeners, as the audience, as citizens of Earth, of on finding a way on just not stop these wars, or just allowing ourselves to say enough is enough, as you said that. So through your incredible journey, you face immense hardship, yet emerging with a story of resilience, creativity, hope, and hope. What what is the one key message you would share with our listeners who might be facing their own challenges?
I think the most important thing I'd like, everyone to take away is don't judge. Don't judge another person. If you haven't, don't, as I say always, don't tie the shoelace if you've never worn the shoe. Don't judge people based on what you see on the outside. Be kind and compassionate to other people because you just do not know what they've either been through or what they're going through. A lot of people have, a hard time trying to express or say anything to anyone. So just be kind and compassionate. I think the world has a lot of hate as it is. We just need to be kind and compassionate to each other, regardless of whatever exterior that you see. At the core of it, we're all humans.
Definitely. One thing that people really push is the fact that of pushing hate, of not showing love, because it's something that I always tell myself that when I see someone that is hateful towards another, is the fact that they don't like it in a way, because loving involves being in a discomfort place in a way, I would say, because hating, it's easy. You hate that certain person without any reason, without. Some people end up hating you because of your skin color, your race, the background you come from, and
Well, hate is taught. No human is born that hates anyone or anything. It's taught to us by our parents, by our community, by our family. It's something that we're not born with, and the problem that we're having now is generational trauma or generational hatred is passed on.
mm, 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 mm. Actually, speaking about the generational trauma, someone said that in order to be a generational trauma, there was someone that agreed upon that, and I felt it in a way of we need to be better. We need to, as much as we trying to end the generational trauma, it starts with us within our families, within teaching our children of saying this is wrong, this is right, and teaching them what is moral, what is morality, what is good, what is bad. And with those closing words, I would like to say thank you so much for being here and also sharing your story and sharing your perspective in all of this when it comes to mental health, and also the wars that are going on across the world. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed the chat, and I hope, together we stand against hatred, and we are helping people open up more about their mental health.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.